Welcome. My name is John Toy. I'm an elder law attorney and currently the section chair of the Tennessee Bar Association Elder Law Section. And joining us today, we have Miss Amelia Crotwell from East Tennessee, Carl Warden from Middle Tennessee, and Miss Pam Wright from West Tennessee, here to answer some questions about the practice of elder law in an attempt to provide some insight into the practice for those of you considering getting into something new. So we'll jump right in, and if you guys want to take turns answering in different ways, that's fine, no specific order, but we'll start off with what inspired you to pursue a career of law in the first place? We'll start with Amelia.
I'll start.
Oh, we'll go with Pam.
Okay, I'll start because it wasn't something I ever planned to do. I'm what they now call a first generation lawyer because no one in my family worked in legal field in any position. But when I was in college, I had an advisor that was real interested in getting me in law school, and she kind of talked me into it. She was a good advisor. She really talked to me. It was kind of shocking. And that was at UT Knoxville. And honestly, that was the prompt, a good advisor.
Good. Amelia?
I went to law school because I didn't know what to do with myself. So it's not something I always dreamed of doing. But I had an undergraduate degree that really wasn't super marketable. It was a creative writing undergrad. And so I got out into the world, got some job experience, and thought, I need something else. And I said, I'll do law school if I can get in. And I did. And that's where I ended up. And it ended up being a pretty good fit for me.
Thank you. Carl?
My father was a lawyer, actually taught law at Vanderbilt. And so when I was in high school, we'd go walk every night, and he taught me how to think like a lawyer. So naturally, I didn't want to practice law, and got a degree in anthropology. And after spending a year in Papua New Guinea, decided that was probably not a good way to have a family, and went and got a law degree.
Yeah. I guess we'll stick to the same order if that's okay, just to keep it simple for everybody. But how did you decide on elder law specifically? Pam, you're up.
Oh, me? Oh, okay. I thought, okay. Well, I'm a little atypical because most of my career I worked in a legal services program of some sort. So I had exposure to lots of different things, but a lot of exposure to public benefits. That was just part and parcel of what I did. And so it was interesting to me to start learning that how the impact that public benefits has on the aging population, and not people who thought they would be impacted by it. So that really got me moving in that direction.
Amelia?
I started out as a litigator, and I always felt like I was putting on two left shoes when I went to work. I would get up in the morning really early, and I would, anxiously prepare for all the arguments and advocacy that I had to do for clients, and go to the courthouse. And I just felt, like a fish out of water. It just wasn't my thing. And I finally, started to gravitate towards the wills and probate side of the practice that I was in, which was just like a general litigation practice that we did a little bit of everything. And I started to feel comfortable, and I started to see things happening more than once. And I got to be familiar with some of the processes, and that, it felt like a welcoming area to me. And so I started to dip my toe into more and more, and going to some conferences, and it developed from there.
Carl, how'd you end up here?
My youngest son's soccer coach's wife. She came to me, her ex-neighbor was in a assisted living married to a guy who got violent and needed to go to memory care, and that guy's son was trying to force her to go with him. I think he'd been like sucking off of daddy's income and didn't want that to stop. So I went there to keep him from taking her by force and moved that lady to a different room. And presently a gorilla showed up wearing pants and a shirt and threatened me. Told him where to get off, and they liked what I did, so I kept on getting cases.
Coming back to Pam, could you describe a pivotal moment that led you to elder law?
Very early when I was doing I started before there were allowances for spouses in nursing homes, some of the improvements that have been done in the last several years. And that was a time when people literally, I mean, getting Medicaid divorces was a big thing. I realize it still happens, but it was a big thing. And someone brought me a lady to talk to, and it was too late for her. She had already spent all of her money on her husband's care, and she was going to be spending the rest of her life living off of her little SSI check. I mean, because her income was so little that now she qualified for SSI. She was in extreme poverty and she had many years to live and did not know what she was going to do. And so I got real interested in all of the talk that was going on in the policy discussion about making a system that could work better for people. And that's still part of what I really like about it.
What about you, Amelia?
I had a case that came into our office that was a conservatorship case, and there was an elder lady who was, really unique, interesting person. But she had never driven. She'd been an educator all of her life, and she had been befriended by someone in the retail sector who had convinced her to give him her home. And this was not a relative. This was just a person that befriended her. She had a pretty pronounced dementia. And so I represented a niece that assisted in fighting to protect her aunt. And it was very meaningful for me. Big learning experience. And after that, I thought, okay, there are people here who are particularly vulnerable because of life circumstances that oftentimes they had no control over. And they're a pleasure to work with. And I just found, this is what I want to do.
Great. Well, Carl, you sort of gave us a specific example of why you got into elder law. So do you want to share with us a pivotal moment where you realized, yeah, I did the right thing?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. The same lady eventually died, because we all do. And I had only known her as this very entertaining, completely demented person. And she died, and at the visitation, there were pictures of her, and I picked up a picture, and it was of this lady, much younger, in hot pants and ladies' white Ray-Ban aviator sunglasses, standing in front of the single engine airplane where she had just soloed. And I thought to myself, I have ignored all of this person that she was before I met her. And I need to not ever do that again. I need to value that person for their whole lifespan, not just the part that I'm seeing.
Pam, what are some unique challenges and complexities to elder law that you enjoy?
That I enjoy? Well, I like problem solving. And I really love it. I mean, my very favorite part of it is if I'm working with other attorneys or other family members who, like me, just want to solve a problem. And we can all brainstorm or come up with alternatives and figure out how to solve a particular elder's problem in a good way, in the best way possible, how to bring in other resources. That is my favorite.
What about you, Amelia?
I have to agree with Pam. That's a great answer, Pam, and it speaks to me and my experience as well. I would add that I think maybe lots of areas of law do this, but I think elder law in particular, you got to be creative. You got to think outside the box, and that really appeals to me. That being innovative in how we approach those problems that Pam is solving, because there's lots of different options available for people, and you have to figure out what flavor they're looking for, how risk averse they are, what their priorities and goals are. And when you figure out those things, and then what's their tolerance for complexity and planning, and then you can put together a solution or a series of solutions for them. And oftentimes they're like, wow, this is just what I needed. And I love to get that kind of feedback. So it's the creative problem solving.
What about you, Carl?
Same thing. I mean, people just sort of come to my office and hand me this pile of uh-oh, and just the opportunity to work it through with them and see them leave the office with some amount of hope in their eyes. That's pretty special.
Pam, in what ways does your elder law practice contribute to the legal profession as a whole or society?
Well, I hope it contributes in a positive way. I think in my area of the state, maybe this is the same everywhere, but I work in a more rural area. And so there are a lot of attorneys who have to do other kinds of work to keep their practice going. And some of them are generalists, but they don't do a lot of the elder law. And a lot of them actually are into, a completely different area of the law. So the courts in my area are finding that they don't always have somebody to appoint in cases because there's just not that many of us. And so I feel like the work I'm doing helps in a big way. I live in Jackson, and even in a town the size of Jackson, and sometimes when we have various family members, we don't have enough lawyers to go around for everybody to have their own lawyers. I mean, it's an area where we need more people, and I hope more people will come in. Good people.
Amelia?
How do we contribute to the legal profession and society as a whole? I think that we help keep government agencies accessible for people. I think we help make that process of accessing benefits. We can't ever make it easy, but we can make it a little less difficult or frustrating for people. I think that we, as a group in the past, this group, members of the council at TBA have cared about policy and what rules are promulgated in the state and also at a national level, and will contribute to and make comments on a lot of those rules. And those rules, some of those comments are effective in helping to change the way that laws or rules are written. And that can be of great assistance to our community. And then I think our offices provide a place, like a safe haven for families to come and dump a lot of the stress and worry of caring for loved ones in a place where we're well equipped to handle the particular challenges that they're facing, and to reassure them that there are options available and that help can be obtained. And so in that way, I think it makes our communities stronger.
What about you, Carl?
Not sure what I do to contribute to the legal profession in general, except that I think, like everybody else on the panel, you included, John, I try to do the best I can in an ethical manner. And for every attorney that does that, there's a model for other attorneys to follow as they're getting into the law. They don't have to be a gunslinger. They don't have to be all about money. They can be about helping people and finding ways to do it productively.
I won't chime in on all the questions, but I will on this one, in that I see elder law as a unique way of, while all of the laws that get passed affect all of the citizens in our state, but I think our elderly clients themselves face and confront those legal issues just differently because of their stage in life. And I think that absent a robust elder law attorney pool, I think that the needs and in some cases even the rights of those people get trampled on or ignored. And I think we do a great service to society by raising those voices up from a different perspective and doing that way. All right, Pam, we'll come back to you here. Your practice of elder law, what gets you excited on a day-to-day basis?
This ties into what I said before. I get excited when I meet with a family and the family's pulling together. If there's not conflict, everybody is trying to do the right thing. They just don't know how to do the right thing. Or as Amelia said, they don't know how to access the resources. Those cases I really look forward to.
What about you, Amelia?
Gosh, I don't know how excited I am at this stage of my career, I'll be honest. What excites me right now where I am in my practice, so I've kind of pulled back a little bit from direct client representation, and I'm doing more like writing and blogging and marketing and things like that for my firm. Because we have two other super active attorneys and another one, a new associate that we've hired that's wonderful. So the things that I get excited about, I wrote an article this year for the Trial Lawyers, Tennessee Trial Lawyers Association, and I got super excited about that. Like, what is the intersection of elder law with other fields of law? How can we support trial attorneys in the work that they might be doing in a medical malpractice case or a personal injury case? And so for me right now, that's where I find things to be exciting and interesting.
What about you, Carl?
Probably a bit of an odd bird, but a lot of my work now is appointed work. And as one of the judges described it, as Carl will give you the extra crispy cases. And I like being able to get in there and figure out what's going on and sort the grain from the thatch and be able to come up with a way to meet the needs of the ward and see that their voice is heard.
Good. Now I'll go ahead and say none of you are allowed to say attending CLEs, but so unique in different ways of how do you stay up to date and informed about the latest developments and changes in elder law?
Elder law is a little different from other legal fields in that a lot of what's going on is not going to be published necessarily in a case or be strictly changed by statute. And so I don't know how anybody can really practice in the area without being in some professional organization or at least an ad hoc group of other professionals, because without talking to the other people, I would never be able to keep up. I mean, the exchanges here in the elder law section of the TBA are just so valuable. Seeing people at the CLEs in person where you can, somebody says, oh, I got a story to tell you. And it turns out it just lights up an idea in your head for something you're dealing with. That's, to me, the best way to stay on top of it.
Amelia?
I agree with Pam entirely. I will add, because see, the nice thing about going second is I get to listen to Pam's response first. But I join in on things. So in spite of the fact that I'm an introvert, I will join committees with national elder law groups. I mean, not just, I mean, local is great. Local is totally important. You got to have local connections. But I also join in at a national level. So I'll join on a committee with Life Care Planning Law Firms Association or Special Needs Alliance, or, one of these other organizations. And those contacts, those people become so integral to my practice. And so when there's news about special needs trusts, I get some kind of notification from, a committee at Special Needs Alliance. And then lots of times I'll share that. So I think joining a committee, serving on the board of an organization is a wonderful way to stay informed. You get all the inside info, oftentimes before it shows up in the paper. And then listservs are wonderful. There's our state listserv through TVA, which is fabulous. There are some other state-based ones, and then there are some national ones. And I would say find yourself a really, robust listserv. And not only should you read it every day to see what other people are talking and chatting about, but you should also contribute to it, because there's going to come a time when you're going to have a question that needs answering. And you build trust with others when you care enough to answer their post. So participation.
Carl?
Can't say CLA, huh? No, I'm a member of a number of organizations, and even though I'm generally antisocial, I like to participate in what they do. And also, as far as I get alerts when Social Security changes something, I get alerts when TennCare changes something. And I guess you have to have the patience to read through the TennCare speak, but it's worthwhile knowing what their latest thoughts are. And then in general, I have a good working relationship with other attorneys in different areas or representatives of the public benefit organizations I deal with. And then for what I do, I have a subscription to the Lancet Neurology and the Lancet Psychiatry. So I'll read their articles about dealing with people and what's going on with them and so forth.
Great. Could each of you highlight a specific skill or quality of a person, whether you see it in yourself or other elder law attorneys you're aware of, that is essential for success in the practice of elder law?
Amelia hit on one that I think is essential, and that's creativity.
I'll say compassion.
Carl?
Yeah. Compassion. I mean, if you don't approach it with compassion, I'm not sure what you're doing for your folks.
Good. Pam, what misconceptions do people have about elder law that you would like to dispel?
Well, there is a misperception that the whole point of elder law is to help people hide assets and take government money. And that's not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Amelia?
I think among lawyers, maybe there's a misconception that elder law is probates and conservatorships and some estate planning. And I'm so sorry. I don't think that's the case. You know, I have a thriving, very busy practice, and we do like almost zero probate and conservatorship work. There's this whole other world out there of elder law that's not that. And I'm not saying that's not a component. That is a component, but there's this whole other, you know, it's any legal issues that affect people that are aging and all those questions and challenges about it. So, you know, I think it's not boring, and there's a ton of different variety and a ton of different niches that you can fit yourself into, besides probate and conservatorship.
Carl?
Mostly people think you have to be old to practice elder law, but I disprove that because I am just a spring chicken.
Pam, are there any specific ethical dilemmas or challenges that are inherent in elder law that you see frequently?
Well, one ethical issue that I see frequently is how far you have to go to protect your client. In elder law, your client is going to be an elder usually, and they may have difficulty charting their own course. So at what point do you rely on other people who are working with them or acting on their behalf? And when do you draw back and just protect your client and send those people to someone else to work through? I find that to be distinct. I'm sure other lawyers have the same thing in different ways, but it's pretty common in elder law.
Mm-hmm. I agree with Pam. I find it challenging oftentimes when you get into complex family relationships that, you know, if you have an elder and they have a special needs child, and all of a sudden, you know, they're drafting a trust for the special needs child, then you're like, wait a minute, are they now both my client? And so who is your client? Where do you draw lines with multi-party representation? What kinds of, you know, formalities do you need to observe if you're going to enter into those kinds of relationships? And yet, isn't there a great benefit oftentimes to having those relationships? You know, I think multi-party representation can be quite appropriate at times, and can really fill the need that needs to be fulfilled. And so it's hard. And then the other aspect of that is diminished capacity. And, you know, when do you, if you have a client with some type of dementia and it's progressed to a certain point, when do you not listen to them anymore and start to listen to their attorney, in fact, under a durable power of attorney instead, and take direction from someone else? You know, and where do your loyalties need to be shored up? When do you need to write letters? And, you know, how do you communicate with clients that have diminished capacity? All of those things can be very challenging and very case specific. And the board is there for you. You know, they have this wonderful email tool now where you can just email them some of your questions and you get an answer back in about 24 or 48 hours. And it's a wonderful tool to help when those questions come up. And I'm sorry to just drone on, but the other thing I'll say is sometimes when someone has capacity, but they're making a terrible decision, you know, like marrying someone, you know, who's obviously it is a strange love match. You know, when do you just have to step back and say, okay, my client has the right to make this terrible decision. Sometimes you have to do that too. So those are hard questions, and they're fairly common. I see that kind of thing. What about you, Carl?
a lot of what both of you have said, given very thoughtful answers. For me, it's a lot of what are the actual motives of the people coming to me. I mean, it's always, well, yeah, we're all concerned about mom and dad. We're all concerned about mom and dad. Gosh, why does that seem to require transfer of money to you? Kind of thing. Or for me, where am I with, because I do have a niche in a lot of its conservatorships, is am I making a decision for somebody based on what I think is best, or am I making a decision based upon their worldview and what they think is important and what they value? And that's never an easy equation, because sometimes their worldviews and values are scarily bad. And just where do you fall on that line is very case specific, and I don't take it lightly.
I'll chime in on this one as well about one of the things I see as an ethical issue that is always apparent is as people age, they naturally build their network of family and friends that help them. And sometimes I've learned to try to trust my gut. I've learned in the length of practice that I feel like I've gotten better at it, but it still keeps me up some nights learning to distinguish between the caregiver and the caretaker. The ones who are not really doing what they should, but it isn't always apparent. And sometimes you just have to learn for red flags and signs. And I think Amelia's correct, reaching out to the board, reaching out to other attorneys and just saying, hey, I just had a consultation and I got the heebie-jeebies, or however you want to say it, that I just need to talk it out. And I think it's okay to do that, because there can be some gray area that surrounds some of our clients. All right. So Pam, one of the things we've talked about in several of the answers is about the compassion and about the care for the people. How do you handle the emotional toll and stress that comes with practicing with elders?
Not well, if I'm being honest. I really feel like I've gained a lot in the past few years, just because those questions have become more publicly discussed in the profession, and also among generations younger than me who look at the work-life balance of, say, their parents, and they don't think that's something they want to do. And it's really informed some decisions I'm making to try to have a better space where I can decompress from work and think about other things and do things to feed my soul.
Amelia?
I agree. I find that I compartmentalize in a healthy way, and I have very good boundaries. So, our clients die a lot. And these are special people that we can have known and had relationships with. We've been in their homes, we've been in their hospital rooms. We know all their family, and we may know them. I mean, I have clients now that I've had for 12 years. And I know them well. And I mean, I hug them and tell them I love them, and they tell me that too. And all of that's wonderful. But they're going to die probably while I'm still their lawyer. And I have to be prepared to handle that. And so I suppose I don't allow myself to form really deep senses of attachment to them. The relationship stays professional. I don't go to everyone's funeral. I can't do that and do this work. And so I also realize that death is a part of life. It's a very natural process, and it doesn't have to be it's full of grief, but it doesn't have to be so sad. And, you know, if I can help make that experience better, if I can help make it the environment that they want, the treatment that they want or don't want, the caregivers and systems in place for them that they want, I can feel good about that, and I don't have to feel sad.
Great answer, Carl.
I mean, as a general thing, I do meditation because I think that's helpful for me. But I can remember early in what I'm doing now, I got a lot of people who were dying. And that was taking quite a toll on me. I discussed it with someone who said, what you're doing is you're taking care of them and making sure they're as safe and as healthy as they can be in their dying process. Your job is not to keep them from dying. In fact, think of it this way: is sometimes your best job is to just stay out of God's way.
Mhm.
And it's like, okay, I get that. And then the other part is learning when my codependency kicks in. Yeah, I'm codependent. What the hell? But for me, the measure is, do I want, for someone who can understand it, do I want them to have something better, healthier choice or whatever, more than they want? And if that's the case, then I need to be careful exactly how far I go.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to a law student who would be looking at practice of elder law? Pam?
Well, pay attention in your ethics courses. um, uh, yeah. And I would say try to visit some of the groups that we've talked about, some of, you know, the CLEs and things. Just hear about it some and get a taste of it. But then you'll see what parts sound interesting to you, and you can do a little more research about that.
Mhm.
You really need to kind of check it out.
Amelia?
That's a tough one. Be aware of whether you really like people or not. If you really like people and you enjoy working with people, this is a great area to go into. You also have to like statutes. You know, it's a very statutory, rule-based kind of law. But I think it's about, for me, it's about the relationships. And so don't go into this area of law if you don't want to have close connections with your clients, close relationships. And I don't mean to contradict myself on the last question because I talked about boundaries, but I think you can have close relationships and really enjoy people without crossing those boundaries. But I see this as a very people-focused area of the law, very different from, gosh, I don't know. I'm thinking of a car wreck. I used to do some car wreck stuff, and you know, it's very different from that. And people need a lot of guidance about very practical things, but they nonetheless need that guidance. So if you have strengths in those areas, people and good practical mind and a lot of compassion, this might be the right area for you.
Carl?
Well, on the flippant side, can you read 3 sections of the Aged, Blind, and Disabled manual and not need to run out of the room screaming? On the less flippant side of it, can you go to a long-term care center and sit down with some of the people there and see them as a human being who's just as valuable as you. Because if you can't, you want to reconsider.
My advice to a aspiring elder law attorney still in law school would be prepared to be multi practice oriented.
Mhm.
I think Amelia touched on it earlier that this isn't, tort litigation where you just get to focus on a very small section of the statutes. It's not criminal law where you're in the same court from the same judge. You might be arguing something about VA disability one week, you're trying to get a client on Medicaid the next, and you're probating a will after that. And if you're not interested in doing that, then if you're not interested in covering all of those areas, you run the risk of missing things. That's one of the presentations I like to give to bar associations is just how intertwined the various areas of elder law are and why it's necessary to with that issue spotting. And so I think that's important to know going in, that you're not going to settle into one little area and be okay. You gotta know. I think last time I counted, it was 8 or 9 areas of practice that you needed to kind of have a good foundation in order to do this well. What kind of technologies or tools do you find most beneficial in the practice of elder law?
Hmm. Well, not Zoom. I mean, it's been valuable, but it's not my favorite thing. I love, I think Amelia is much better able to talk about this than I am. She is much more savvy, as is Carl. I really do like what we can do now with documents. That sounds pretty lame, but if you're as old as I am and you came from the world where that wasn't possible, it is a really nice thing.
Yeah.
Second that. I would say great drafting software is essential, and if you don't like, some of the companies out there that are preparing the forms for you, you don't want to buy them on the open market, you can customize your own, you can create your own forms, and then you can use your case management software. Like I use Action Step, other people use Clio and other Time Matters and others. You can program from within those oftentimes to like automatically populate a lot of your forms. So we use them to do powers of attorney in our office. We use Action Step for that. And, we put the information in under the party's name. And then when we generate the document, it populates all that information into the document, and we can draft a power of attorney very quickly. So I think there's some awesome things with technology in that regard. I think other forms of tools or technology that we use, besides, the case management software, the drafting software, I think good old Adobe Acrobat, like the desktop version that lets you do all kinds of things. We assemble all our Medicaid applications using Adobe, and we can number the pages and we can annotate every page, and and we can go back and visually look at it, and we can see all the different things that are in that 150-page document that we're going to send in. It's a great organizational tool, so I particularly like that. And then I think for communicating with clients, in our office this year, we started texting with clients. We use Connect software for that. It's been tremendous. Our clients love it. We put a link for texting on our website, and we probably get, I don't know, 10 or 12 a week, just inquiries via text from people looking at our website. It's a really, I think, informal, not intimidating way to contact a law office. People feel really comfortable doing that. So that is particularly wonderful. So I guess I could stop there. I would say ChatGPT is something that if you haven't played with it yet, you should play with it. ChatGPT is a great way to start a letter to a client that you're not quite sure what you want to say, or to outline a list of questions, for example, that you would use in a CLE. Like you have here, John, I'm not saying you did that, but you could ask ChatGPT and you might get some very similar questions, and it might cut your time down from an hour of generating questions to 15 minutes. You still have to put your spin on it. But I think, these tools are going to be more and more powerful, and they are the key to making your staff more efficient. If your staff is more efficient, that means you don't have to hire as many people. And if you're trying to hire anybody right now, it's really hard to hire people right now and to get good people that are interested in the kinds of jobs that we have. So if you can make the current people you have more efficient, it's wise to do so. So those are the tools that I've been working with thus far.
Carl?
Well, on a very serious side, I know a lot of attorneys who use the assembly software for fairly sophisticated estate planning. And the problem with it is that they don't know where there's a question about what do you do with this? What do you do with this? What the question is actually talking about. So if you're going to use that, you probably ought to know basically how that stuff works instead of thinking the form is going to do the thinking for you, because I've had to pull several people's, what out of the fire when they've done something, I guess the term is stupid. But on the other side of it is, my technology is Sherry. I'll write Sherry, here's the names and here's the forms I want you to use. And it works really well. Really well.
I will admit, Amelia, that I did get ChatGPT to give me the framework for our questions today.
Yay!
Oh,
Good for you.
It provides you give it a prompt and say, I'm going to be interviewing some attorneys and I would like to ask them about their experiences and how they got into the field and some of their, and I don't remember the whole prompt, but it gave me 35 questions and I whittled them down and customized them. And I think you touched on that. And I think that's the most important part, is that you can't let this AI stuff do it for you, but you can help it build a framework for you to work in. And on the other note about technology, some of the advances in battery life with laptops, quality of mobile printers and scanners. I recently upgraded my mobile printer and scanner. When you're in people's houses and nursing homes and senior centers and stuff, having an oops where you misspelled somebody's name and it's not really practical to say, well, I need to run back to the office to reprint this, where having those tools available in a field where they're not always able to come to you. I think that's an important technological thing that benefits our practice. All right, what do you see as the future of elder law, how it'll evolve or change in the coming years?
I think there'll be more emphasis on a different kind of family planning. We've talked a lot about elders in this presentation, but of course our practice also includes families who have, children who are going to be disabled their whole life, or other family members that have some chronic medical or cognitive needs that require a framework for assistance. I think we're going to see more and more of that, and I think we're all going to prepare for some changes in just the way families are and how we work. I think we're going to see a lot of generational changes in the next, I'd say 10 years, pretty significant, and we're going to have to keep up with that.
Amelia?
Yeah. I think public resources are going to become more and more limited. So Medicaid funding is going to be more limited. I think, we have more conservative, the state of Tennessee is very conservative. Our General Assembly is very conservative. Tennessee was the first block grant state. We don't yet know exactly how that's going to play out, but we'll be seeing it play out over the next 10 years for sure. So I think that there is going to be a more competition for those benefits, and the benefits are going to become more scarce. And the other major problem that I see is that we're going to have a heck of a lot more older people, and we're not going to have a population base to give care to them. And I don't, we already see that it is really, really, really difficult to find caregivers who will come to the home and provide care, even for people that can afford to pay for it. And so what happens when, we have so many of those situations where people can't be at home and they need facility-based care, and we can't even staff those, or we don't have enough facilities for all the boomers. And, I don't think we're having a national conversation about this. I don't see leadership from the state of Tennessee or from, even the US Congress. I don't see a lot of initiatives there to address that. And I frankly think it's one of the biggest problems we're going to have in the next, 25 years?
Oh,
I mean, when you were talking about that, what I grew up with being called the population pyramid is now more or less the population column. And the way the government worked with funding some of the programs that we have is counting on, I don't know, something by way of a Ponzi scheme, is that, there was a larger population of younger people who were putting in tax money that was then supporting the people who were starting to receive the benefits like Medicare and Medicaid and so forth and so forth. And that population pyramid has gone from there to, it's more or less like this at this point, which means that our Congress is either going to have to buck up and deal with it, or do their usual, which is to pass it off and make it somebody else's problem. And generally, I think that will be a lot of the problem of the elder law practice moving forward, is where are you going to find the resources?
Mm-hmm.
all right. Final question. Looking back over your getting into practice, the years you've spent growing and building your business and practice, is there something that you would do different?
I think I would have started in private practice a lot earlier. I have a lot more opportunities to really help my community than I realized I would have. And it's a little more personally fulfilling.
Amelia?
I'm going to pull a Carl here. I would name my practice Elder Law of Tennessee instead of Elder Law of East Tennessee. That's a little bit of a flippant answer, but I really didn't think about, I didn't think big enough, as big as I wanted, as my ambition at the time. And so that's something I would change. But, I think that having the 10 years of practice that I had as a general practitioner, doing some litigation and doing lots of different things, it really gave me a great base of knowledge to come into elder law, because I draw on that base of knowledge all the time. And so for that reason, I don't regret that I spent 10 years floundering around, uncomfortable with litigation. But on the other hand, I love what I do now. And if I could go back and get rid of all the angst and anxiety that I had early in my career and replace it with the joy that I have about my practice now, I would certainly do that. So, gosh, that's a bunch of contradictions there. But I wish I could have been in elder law earlier, but with the same amount of base knowledge that I gained from not being in it earlier. How's that?
That's great. Carl?
I've had to learn sometimes the hard way that looking back on the past and regretting it is only good if you use that to learn how to do the present better. Because no matter how hard you regret the past, it's just not going to change. But learning from my mistakes, I think I would have, because I run with scissors and don't play well with others, as all of you are familiar with, but I would have had more staff and taken a leap of faith to hire more people earlier on. Because it drives me crazy some days, but it's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thank you all very much for taking the time out of your afternoon to sit and listen to my questions and to provide amazing answers for people who are either new to the practice of law or new to looking at moving into the practice of elder law, even as a seasoned attorney. And I think this will provide a great resource for years to come for people to look at and say, what does it mean to get into this area of practice? And so thank you all that have watched and made it through this session with us, and take care.